Sensationally silver, because you are.
Welcome, everyone, to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age, people who are going to bring you information, inspiration, and validation. Join us. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, conversations with extraordinary, ordinary persons of age. My guest today is somebody who's intriguing me. She's going to intrigue you too. She has something amazing to offer. If you have a habit that you want to change, get rid of, do something different, and if you want to refocus your life at this time of life, Allison's going to tell you how to do that. Right, Allison?
That's right.
So, welcome. I'm so glad you're my guest because I want to hear all about this. Allison's book is called 60 is a Great Start. Tell people about that double meaning of that title, Allison.
Okay, yeah. And just I hate to correct, but it's 60 is a good start.
Good start.
I
I'm
know
saying
I thought about great, but then I thought I think we better go with good. But it does have a double meaning. It the first meaning is I was 60 when I wrote it, and kind of having this freak out moment, being very restless, really with purpose at that point. And I'm going to be 65 this year. So this was, almost 5 years ago, 4 to 5 years ago. But I like to talk about this as a book for women in midlife, so sometimes that's 50, sometimes it's 70, it's just kind of wherever you are. For me, I started late when I had my first child. I was 37. So I had a career before that. And it's like some women maybe started in their early 20s having children, or maybe not at all. Maybe they were just heavy duty into a career, but or both. But regardless, I think we get to this midlife point. Again, for me, it was 60, where it's just a very transformative time for women. Now, the other meaning is 60 days is a good start. And we know from Dr. Caroline Leaf, neuroscientist, she's written probably 20 books. She's one of my favorites out there on that subject. And she has looked, through the microscope at the nerve cells in the brain and can literally see habit formation on those nerve cells. And we hear, oh, it's 21 days to change a habit. It's 30 days to change a habit. Well, no, it's really 60 days at the minimum. Could be up to 8 months. Depends on what the habit is. Is it a thought habit? Is it a physical habit? But she can see that formation. The final formation is like this little umbrella shape on the nerve cell, on the dendritic spine of the nerve cell. And so, there's our proof there of how long it takes. So the book is really a combination of sort of everything I've done for the last 30 or 40 years, including study in natural health. I got my traditional naturopath certification, I guess it was about 6 years ago after studying all this stuff anyway. And then my fascination with longevity and all the studies out there on that, which I sort of pulled together a number of different ones, including the blue zones. I think most people have heard of them, but I'm still surprised at some people that have not heard of the blue zones. So just real quickly, those are the 5 areas. They're working on number 6 right now, where there's the largest conglomeration of centenarians, 100-year-olds, that are living relatively healthy lives at that point. And, why? What do they all have in common? But there's also like some big Harvard studies on that. And then there's also a book I looked at. It's basically longevity in the world of cancer, and it's called Radical Remission. And this woman was looking at radical, meaning the cancer patients that she studied were supposed to have not a good outcome, but they did, and they feel like it was due to the lifestyle changes they made And a lot of these are just the same ones that we see in just general longevity studies. So super interesting.
So, Allison, you're talking about something that, yes, it's nice to change a habit or whatever, but you're also talking about something that's life saving,
Yeah.
redirecting your life that's going to give you not only a life worth living, but a life that's going to last longer. And I mean, I don't think anybody wants to last too long unless that life is worth living, right?
Exactly, exactly. It's funny. People are, for a long time, we've called it longevity. And then people are like, well, it's not just longevity, it's how you feel. You don't want to be living long in a nursing home for 20 years. So now the term I think is health span, lifespan, health span. I don't know. I'm hearing, different things like that. But yes, if we're going to live long, we want to live well for sure.
Yes. Yes. Okay. So you've taken this scientist's exploration of those brain cells and how they change, and you've made it practical for the rest of us because that's nice information, but what can we do about it?
Exactly.
That's
That's
your
what I'm
piece.
always thinking. I'm like, well, I could just spit out this information. Okay, great. That's interesting. But how are we going to move the needle? How are we going to apply it? How are we going to make it practical? And, my background so before I got married and had kids, I was a TV producer out in LA for about 8 years, prior to that in Texas. But that as a producer, like your ultimate skill that you have to be able to do is organize and plan. I mean, there was one series I did for PBS that was 20, let's see, I think it's 28 30-minute shows. Well, we would be interviewing, one person for show number 5, 10, 18, and 23. So it was this crazy, it's like shooting them all at the same time in a way. So, that was a real needed skill that I just sort of naturally had, I think. And then I homeschooled my kids for about 20 years. And so, same thing, like the planning and organization to execute on that was just huge. I've always joked I'm a planner addict, and I always thought, like, literally for the last 10 years, I thought someday I'm going to create a planner. But, I never did until now. And so, there has to be a plan that we can do this. And so I do have a planner that's the 60-day dare is what the book leads to, which is a plan to execute on these new habits that we want to develop because it takes that long.
Well,
And
my sense, Allison, is that you take us by the hand and you walk us through this thing. I mean, this is kind of a negative way of saying it. I don't mean it that way at all. It's like there's no escape. You're on
right,
this track and you can do this thing, dup, 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 dup. You
yeah,
make it so clear, so basic, step by step. So nobody's going to be wandering around running, what should I do
right,
next?
right.
You've planned it, just like you say. You're
Yeah.
really good at planning.
Yeah. Yep. That's exactly what's going on. And it's I call it baby steps. We want to set ourselves up for success. It's real easy to have, big eyes and think, oh, I'm going to do such and such every day for 60 days. Well, that's pretty tough to do. So you've really got to set up your environment. I love the line, environment triggers behavior. That's my friend's joke. I say that all the time, but it is so true. That's what those centenarians were dealing with in those, areas of the blue zones. Their environment, without really even thinking about it, their environment was triggering their behavior, whether it was to, walk a lot outside, fresh air, or whether it was to socialize, like their meal time was a real social time. That's a huge factor for longevity. Yeah, as we get older, loneliness can be a big factor, depending on, it could be people can be a widow or a, divorced, all the kids have left, if you're an introvert, even more so. So those social relationships are so important, and their meal times would be like several hour long social times where they're prepping and then eating and then sitting around, right? So yeah, and for us in this modern world, and modernity has become kind of the problem. we have to make an effort to set our environments up to trigger the behavior we want. For instance, something like having your tennis shoes sitting, in view right when you wake up. You see them, maybe or wherever you need to put them. So I always say, just lace up your shoes. Well, once you've laced up your shoes, you're more likely to walk out the front door. And once you've walked out the front door, just walk down to the end of the block. I mean, so it's just one little thing after another. Or put the fruits and vegetables in glass bowls at eye level in your refrigerator. So that's the first thing you see.
So it's one of the things you're doing is you're leading people to make a commitment to the behavior,
yes,
and the mindset and all of it that's going to be for their own good. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, it's exactly that. And, the problem that I have experienced and see is that we can make promises to other people in our lives and carry them out. But sometimes it's really hard to carry out the promises we want to make to ourselves. There's a line, I forget who says it, but your future is hidden in your daily routine. So it's like we have to ask ourselves the question, what do I want my life to look like a year from now or 5 years from now? Like, what kind of person do I want to be? Do I want to be a fit person? Do I want to be, just what are the things that we want for our future selves? And so to do that, we have got to be doing those things daily. They have to become our norm. And it's just so easy to fall into norms that aren't what we want.
And as we get older, I think it's also kind of seductive to think, well, it doesn't matter anymore. I'm old.
Yes.
And that's one way of looking at it. But the other is there's this freedom that comes from being older, where you're free of so many necessary behaviors, commitments, whatever. It's like it's our turn.
It's so true. That's exactly right. It's exactly what I like to say. Some of the stuff we just were so committed to for the last few decades, we're free of that now. And we really, and we really get to figure out what is our current purpose. And it is something. And people do think, oh, I'm too old. No, that's the big myth. Look at you. I mean, that is the big myth, where this is a time where we have all this wisdom. I mean, the wisdom of decades of life, that if it's not, one person, maybe it's 100 or 1,000 people, whatever, that need to hear that and that will benefit. And add to that the fact that there's never going to be anybody else, nor has there ever been anybody just like us. Isn't that crazy that we're the uniqueness of us in the history of the world? That kind of blows my mind. But yeah, so it's an incredible time to, it's really just, and it's just a mindset shift to just change your mind on that.
Open that door.
Yeah, yeah. I know that one of the things, so when I turned 60, I was restless, and I was just asking, and I had done the same turning 50 and 40. I remember that year leading up to those decade birthdays, I was just like, what am I asking the big questions? What am I doing with my life? Am I doing what I'm supposed to be doing? Well, at 40, I was pregnant with my second. At 50, I was adopting our fifth. And so I kind of was like, yeah, I'm doing what I should be doing. But at 60, the big three are out of the house, the younger two, 15 and 18, they're very independent. And so everything really did change. And, I had just all this freedom to really think and, and have that sort of white space in my mind to sort of figure that out. And I just thought, I love what I do, which is teaching women about natural health and encouraging them and things like that. But I needed something else to sink my teeth in for the next 5 to 10 years, so I thought, I think I'm going to have to just say yes to some things as they pop up that won't necessarily be the thing I'm looking for, but like it'll lead to that, and just be real aware of signs and things. But so one of the first things I did was I got into this Facebook group by a guy named Jesse Itzler, and his wife created Spanx, Sarah Blakely. So he's a real entrepreneur too. And he's probably now in his late 50s, I'd say. But he had this group where he had a calendar he sold, and this group came with it. So I'm just sort of perusing this Facebook group. I don't know anybody in it, and they're all ages. But his whole thing was he wanted you to create a masogi, which is a Japanese word for a life-changing event every year. So he wanted you because he wanted it to be memorable, so you could be like, oh yeah, back in 2021, I did such and such. And each year, you'd remember what you did, like something big, something, it could be anything. It could be climb a mountain or write a book or repair a relationship or lose some weight, or it just could be anything that you remember as your Misogi. So it took me several months took me about three months to kind of ponder that and think, what could I do? What could I do? Well, all of a sudden, this girl pops up in the group and she says, I'm going to start 75 hard tomorrow. It's a challenge for 75 days. And does anyone want to do it with me? Well, I had read about it 4 months prior. I'd actually listened to a 45-minute podcast about the guy who created it. He's this big, muscular, tattoos all over him guy. Probably men are his main target market. Certainly younger people are his target market. And I listened to it and I thought, oh, there's no way I could do that. It's a diet exercise challenge, really, for 75 days. And if you mess up one day, you got to start over. It's pretty intense. Well, I thought, no, I can't do that. Well, then 4 months later, so I'm in this group that nothing changed within those 4 months, except the fact that I was listening and reading about these people who were just doing all these great, fun things in their life. And this girl says that. And I thought, And I listened to the podcast again, and I thought, I think I can arrange my life. You had to work out outside for 45 minutes and inside for 45 minutes every day. I thought, I think I can arrange my life to where I could do this. But the only thing it was a mindset shift, is what I'm trying to say. And it goes to that concept that we are the five people that we hang around with, right? It's like, what is the influence in our life? Is it uplifting? Are the people around us uplifting? Are the things we're listening to or watching uplifting? To make us just go, oh, I thought I couldn't do that, whatever that thing is, but I think I can do that. Right. So that was a big thing. And I think that's super important to everybody.
Did this person who kind of brought your attention back to that 75-day challenge thing, did she become sort of, I want to call it an action buddy, somebody you did this thing with?
She actually did not. I did say on there, hey, I think I'm going to do this with you. My husband decided to do it with me, which was great. So having somebody, and actually, I think she ended up not finishing it, but because I was really motivated, this was turning 60 was part of the motivation. Also, this was my Masogi. So I was like, really looking for something that was going to help me just sort of figure out what my next big step was. So doing that, and mostly it was with my husband. And then also I was in a little online mastermind with some women, kind of asking those big questions. They were all ages, though. It wasn't like midlife and over. It was just a bunch of women. And so those two things were what eventually led to, about 7 months after my 60th birthday, I was doing a little breathing meditation that I love to do. It's like a 10-minute thing in the mornings. And I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to write a book. Of course, my brain was like, what? No, you're not. Everybody's read this, that, but it's nothing new. Of course, there's nothing new under the sun, right? But maybe a little twist on it. So yeah, that was my sort of progress of how I got to write the book. And then that took like 3 years.
Do you recommend when people start this to have an action buddy, somebody that you sort of
Yes,
report
I do.
to? Okay.
I absolutely do. And I have an online program. So I look at this as there's a number of options here. There is the unique person that can do it on their own. Great. If that's you, I think they're very few, honestly. I would I would get a couple of friends, a spouse, a couple of friends or whatever to do it together because we need accountability, and then if that doesn't work, or if you want to do it with your friends and me, I've got an online program. We're in the middle of it right now, a 60-day dare. Anybody can come in and start at any time, though. But I started one about 25 days ago. So, and I'll continue to have them throughout the year. But yeah, I just felt like we've got to have that accountability is huge. We do a weekly Zoom call where we just get together and see how's it going, what's good, what's not good, things like
I
that.
know that sometimes I'm thinking about this in terms of people going on diets with their best friend.
Yeah.
We're going on this diet. We're not going to do this. We're going to do this. And then a few days or weeks in, there's a self-sabotage on both
Yes.
parts. It's like, let's go out. We've done so well. Let's go out to lunch and celebrate. So what about that factor that yes, there's the support, but there can also be the collusion to abandon this or kind of short stop it or whatever.
Well, I mean, I think that's where you just have to be careful of who you're going to do that with. I mean, I guess that would be one mark toward doing it with the in the online program because that's just not going to happen. But, we're just all doing it. For me, to have something that's got a limited time on it, like, okay, I'm doing this for 60 days. Now, again, some habits are going to require more than that. So this 60 days is going to be a good start. We'll be doing another one starting, I think it's 3 weeks later after this one ends. But you just have to. It's back to setting yourself up for success. If you think you probably know your friends, if you think they're likely to do that, then maybe you both join in the group, and that's just like a third level of accountability. But accountability is so key. And so we make it fun. We have posts every day that you can, people are chatting about, and there's a tracking system where you can check off what you did. And um, so, I just think that's really the biggest part to complete something. And you do go through different emotional steps along the way. 3 weeks in, just like you said, you may be like celebrating, I did this for 3 weeks, but no, not enough. It's not enough. We're not there yet. We've got to keep going.
That 3 weeks thing is interesting because I don't know, I can't prove this, but having worked in the field of addiction, I noticed that there were threes, 3 days, 3 weeks, three
Yes.
months, and
Uh-huh.
sometimes 3 years that
Hmm.
were turning points where people could either slip back or somehow garner the support or whatever to carry on. But three seemed to be critical.
That's so interesting. That sounds like a godly number.
Yeah, could be.
I
It
mean,
could be.
yeah.
So, what is the hardest part, do you think, for most people? You have these three areas that people need to address: the physical, the body. You say them for me.
Yeah. So it's body work, brain work, and world work. And in body work, so I call the big five under each of those categories. And I give you that choice. So you're going to, and these big five are just, I mean, like pretty much anybody would say, yeah, those are the big five. So for body work, it's eat, drink. It's eat, meaning what's your diet? Okay, you could change your diet. In fact, mine right now, I'm doing two under body work. And one is I'm eating 30 grams of protein before I eat anything else every day. So to me, it's always been really hard for me to get as much protein as they say we need, but it is critical, right? At this point in life, we need protein because we need muscle strength, and we need to, keep our muscles strong. And remember, my mother died back in 2018, and her last few years were in a wheelchair because her muscles just literally deteriorated. And so I'm really kind of keen on that. But it's also a drink. How much water are you drinking? I think there's some crazy statistic, way over 50%, I forget what it is exactly, that ER visits, over 50% are dealt with just by hydration. People just aren't hydrated enough. And we're like 70% water, our bodies are. Different parts are even more than that. And so, that's just keeping our body parts like supple and, working well. So eat, drink, move would be any kind of exercise. I think at this point in life, it's all about walking and strength training. Um, and then, so you could do a combination of things, but you're gonna be very specific, right? SMART goals, very specific, measurable, whatever goal you set. So if you did it or not that day. So, it's not like I'm going to exercise every day. No, we have to be specific. And you'll decide, if you're just very sedentary and haven't done any exercise, maybe for you it's walk 5 minutes outside or something, and you could walk more once you get going. But if you're used to walking 30 minutes every day, maybe you want to increase it a little bit. So it's just, you're going to design it within these parameters. Then sleep is the next one, and focusing on getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. And there's so many techniques and ways to do that we talk about. And then the fifth one is breathe. And that's just like a deep breathing session daily. I love Wim Hof breathing. Um, so that's the other one I'm doing right now is the breathing session. That really gets all your systems just kind of firing. If you do it right in the morning, it's really the best time to do that. And then in brain work, we have right. So brain work is all of our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. Spiritual is a big part of the longevity studies, having a spiritual life, gathering in a spiritual community of some sort. So writing would be like journaling, morning pages, just kind of continuous writing, maybe just downloading what's in your brain onto paper. For some that maybe have trauma, they're still kind of haven't fully dealt with, although, there's different levels that we may be dealing with that our whole lives and on different levels, right? So that could be one you choose. Reading, that's going to be just nonfiction, uplifting material. I prefer a book because we just don't do that anymore. And it's so nice to sit and read just say 10 pages a day of a book.
To
Nonfiction
hold
again.
it in your hands.
Hold it in your hands. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful thing.
Yeah.
But you could do listening also, like an audiobook or something like that. Just as long as it's uplifting you, teaching you something, improving you somehow, even if it's in a business capacity. And then clear. So clear is decluttering, and it's just like 15 minutes minimal. Find something to declutter in your house. You know how that can just mess with our brain. We can't like think straight if we're just surrounded by clutter, but it's also detoxing your home and getting the chemicals out. Typically in the bathroom, the laundry room, under the kitchen sink, all these products that we've just been, in America or the Western world, just thrown at us that are full of chemicals. And we've got to get those out. There's so many good choices out there for.
Another aspect about decluttering is that it's a great prosperity principle. You make room for more good to come in when you get rid of what isn't serving you, what isn't being used, whether pass it on, throw it
Yes.
away, whatever is the correct thing to do with it,
Yes.
and make room for the good.
I love that. Yes, so true. So on so many levels, like that's it on a spiritual level, what it does for us, but just so mental, emotional, spiritual. I love that. And then meditate, which would include meditate, pray, or affirmations, or a combination of all of that, maybe 10 minutes minimum a day. And then create. That would be like art making for the purpose of just settling our nervous system. I mean, there's a study that if we are art making, I love needlepoint. That's what I do. I've just developed that habit in the last 4 to 5 years. And, I love it. I look forward to, I don't let myself do, it's like my reward at the end of the day for a good day. And but I give a ton of ideas, and this is not something like if you're a painter and you sell your paintings. It's not that. This is just some kind of art making. But the study was saying it lowers our cortisol levels, after 45 minutes, which I believe. But just something where you're just expressing your creativity, and it's de-stressing. That's the whole point of it. So that's the brain work. Those are the options. And then in the world work, that is our purpose and our relationships. So on that one, you actually get to rotate those throughout the week. So if you don't know what your purpose is and you're still sort of trying to figure that out, there's the first one's called dream. So dream is 60 questions, back to 60, that you will answer, and these are in the book, each day. Just journal your answer. It may be short, maybe a little longer on some days, but these questions, I believe, will lead you to what you should be doing at this point in your life. So that's for someone who's just not sure, what am I even doing now? Some people are just like, I don't even know what I like. Right. So it's really figuring those things out. And then engage. That's going to be really good for that person that maybe lives alone or has a loneliness issue or is an introvert maybe, but it's not a text, but it's engaging in a relationship. You may have to make yourself do that, let's say 3 times a week. Maybe you ask someone to go to coffee, or maybe you call your brother who lives across the country and you haven't talked to in forever, or just that kind of thing.
Or maybe you volunteer to do something at the library with little kids, read them a book or whatever.
Well, yes, and that is actually the fourth one. I call help. It's volunteer, because that really can become purpose for people. And so it's really looking at all the options that are out there for that. And then gather is the next one, which is the spiritual focus. And it's back to that, in the longevity studies, these people, all of them were part of a spiritual community of some sort. Maybe it's a church, maybe it's a large group like that. It could be a small group, it could be a one-on-one, but for the purpose of, just discussing spiritual things. And then act. So if you do know what your purpose is, you're going to work on it, like I would say, an hour a day if you can. But again, you can rotate through those. So I'm engaging every day because I still have 2 kids at home. I've got my husband at home. So that's always happening. But I also have act on there because I'm doing what I'm doing. And then I also have gather on there once a week for sure.
All right. So all of you who are watching, listening, you can tell there's a lot to this. I recommend you get the books. The 60 is a good start. And what I'm calling the workbook, which is is it the DARE, the 60-day DARE?
It's actually, the workbook is called Reignite, the 60-day DARE planner.
Okay. So that's the one that takes you. You've got the theory over here and the concepts, and then here's the step by step by step. Allison takes you by the hand, helps you to do this thing. And one of the things I'm hearing too, Allison, is we get to choose what we like. I know how important it is with physical exercise. You've got to choose the one you like. If you do, you choose something you don't like, it's actually bad for your body. It does a whole different thing. So if you love to walk, you go walk. If you want to skip rope, you do that. Whatever it is, but you got. When I garden, I've noticed that I get this big smile on my face. I just walk through everything I'm planting, everything I'm pruning, and I'm smiling and smiling. That's part of what makes doing this whole thing worth it, right?
Yes, absolutely. I'm so glad you brought that up. That's part of that setting yourself up for success, and if you get a week into it and you're like, oh, I put too much on my plate here. I've got to, back this off. That's fine. But yes, you do need to love or like what you're doing for sure, or you're not going to do it.
Allison, we need to stop for today, but I'm hoping you'll come back. And if you're willing to kind of take us through a theoretical habit and this change process using what you've written, can we do that?
Absolutely. I'd love to.
I would love that. I would just love that. You get to see how it works. Thank you so much for being my guest today. And thank you, all of you who've been watching and listening. Come back again. And when Allison is here, she's going to help you change your life for the better, make it richer, make it broader, make it deeper, make it better. Yeah. Okay. Bye
That's
for
cool.
now. Sensationally Silver, A State of Mind, is sponsored by Sensationally Silver, a complete hair care product line created especially for people with hair like ours, naturally gray and white hair. Sensationally Silver products can be found exclusively at sensationallysilver.com.
Sensationally silver.